My daughter, Lily, was an 8-year-old who treated Minecraft like a second language. Her setup looked like a little ritual shrine. An old desk with stickers along the edge, a stuffed rabbit propped against the monitor for moral support, headphones that swallowed half her hair, and a tiny laminated checklist taped to the monitor that read, in her careful little handwriting, 1, record 2, check mic, 3, say hi. She approached every session like a tiny director, announcing her intentions, narrating every clumsy jump and near miss with a creeper, and practicing the exaggerated little gasps and celebratory whoops she wanted to use on camera. Those after-school hours were so consistent that they became part of the rhythm of the house. Snack, homework, then 30 minutes of Lily building an elaborate treehouse and pretending an audience was watching. I could tell, from the way she cleared the desk and set up her stuffed rabbit just so, how serious she was about it. So when the sound I heard from her corner of the house one afternoon was a quiet, breathy sniffle instead of the usual running commentary, it felt wrong in the bones. I paused in the doorway, watching the light from the monitor paint her profile. She tried to smile when she saw me. Small, automatic, the kind of smile children use to hide confusion. But her hands were trembling enough that she kept restarting a clip. "It's okay," she said, and the phrase was threadbare. I sat down beside her. She wanted to tell me nothing at first, because kids instinctively try to fix their own small dramas. But the recording was still open on the screen. She had hit record earlier and then, in the upset, forgotten to stop it. We watched it together. At first, it was normal. Lily's voice, bright and chatty, describing a tunnel she was about to dig. Then another player's messages started to crawl across the chat window, sharp, targeted, and escalating. The messages were not playful teasing. They were deliberate attempts to frighten and humiliate, aimed not only at Lily but at other children on the server. This player, whom Lily later called Big Meanie, alternated between derisive jokes about kids' ages, crude boasts about breaking into accounts, and threats to reveal personal details. He tried to shame them for speaking up, called their concerns pathetic, and laughed when someone voiced fear. He used language that a child should never have to hear, and he kept pushing until the chat filled with hurt and silence. Watching Lily's small shoulders hunch, hearing her say, "I'm 8," and then hearing the scoff that followed, this is the image that lodged itself behind my ribs. Looking through the recording felt like going over a report of a slow-motion accident. You could see every turn where it could have been avoided, every place where someone could have intervened. My first reaction was the tight coil of protectiveness, an instinct so old it felt biological. My second reaction, which surprised me with how quick it came, was fury. Not the theatrical fury of a movie, but a precise, cold sort of anger that made my thoughts sharpen into questions. Who is this person? How did they get on that server? How many other kids did they abuse? Why did they think it was acceptable to say those things? The anger was practical as well as emotional. It wanted facts, timestamps, everything that could convert a feeling into a path forward. I began to comb the evidence with a methodical sort of calm that was driven by that heat beneath the skin. I rewound the recording, pausing to transcribe lines and timestamps. I saved the chat log, downloaded the video, and checked the server information for session IDs and player names. Little details that would have seemed inconsequential at first. An offhand boast about being older, a mention of a hobby, a username that used a real first name, started to look like breadcrumb clues. Those tiny clues, when fit together, transformed the event from an upsetting one-off into a pattern that could be traced. As I worked, my feelings moved through stages. First came disbelief. How could someone treat a child that way? Then grief, a low sorrow at the thought that a space Lily loved had been invaded. Then the slow, hot build of indignation, an idea that someone had deliberately weaponized words against a group of children. That indignation made me careful, not reckless. I did not want to lash out blindly. I wanted to be sure of the facts so whatever we did next would be effective and proportionate. So I cataloged everything: chat timestamps, snippets of the audio, the user's exact spelling of his name, and repeated phrases he used that suggested a pattern. Each thing I logged cooled the flame of raw anger into something actionable. The process, oddly, felt like sculpting. chiseling away confusion until only the solid form of what happened remained. Watching Lily rewind, watch, and then compose herself was the hardest part. She wanted to be brave for the sake of her stuffed rabbit and for the imaginary audience she pictured. Her resilience was tender and fierce all at once. When she looked up at me with those bright, determined eyes and said, "Will you help me?" the anger subsided into a different resolve. Not to punish for the sake of punishment, but to restore the playground she loved. That resolve was steady, and it had a plan forming inside it. I promised her we would handle it, and then I stayed up later that night combing through the rest of the server logs for anything else Big Meanie had left behind. Each new piece of evidence tightened the knot of intention in my chest. This would not be swept under a rug. The hurt deserved an answer, and the answer would not be chaos. It would be carefully aimed and just. Once the anger had been shaped into something useful, the next move felt almost surgical. I stopped being a parent who was merely furious and became a person with a notebook of facts. Exact timestamps, verbatim chat lines, the username that kept popping up like a dog-eared page in a book. I went back over the recording with the same careful attention I give a technical manual. Pause, note, save. And as the pieces lined up, a clear thread emerged. The player had left more than cruelty behind. There were careless little tokens of identity in public places, an application post for a server, a forum comment where the same handle used a real first name, an offhand remark about a favorite sport. None of it was a secret, and none of it required tricks to read. It was the kind of sloppiness that felt almost like an invitation. If you want to play in the sandbox, at least be careful with how you throw sand at other people. Finding that application was the turning point. In the application, the user had listed a contact that matched the handle in a plain, unmistakable way. Seeing that entry felt like flipping the last page of a mystery novel and finding the author's signature. I breathed out, not in triumph so much as with the small, steady relief of someone who'd finally located the right key. For a minute, the scene was almost absurdly domestic. The desk lamp hummed. The recording software sat open on the screen, and I felt the calm click of a mechanism lining up. This wasn't dramatic justice on a stage. It was paperwork and patience and the dull, satisfying business of holding someone accountable. I reached out to the boy's father through the channel the boy himself had effectively left me. I kept the message straightforward and factual. Who I was, what had happened, and a link to the recorded session so it could be seen rather than summarized. I did not perform a public shaming. I did not rally a mob or post anything viral. I sent a private message with evidence and a simple ask. Would the parent please look into this? I wanted the grown-ups who were legally responsible to have the full picture in front of them, and then to do what parents do when their child has seriously crossed a line. The silence that followed felt heavy for a few days, the waiting kind that a small, sharp stone can create in your shoe. Then the reply came. The father had watched the video, was as stunned and upset as we were, and had taken decisive action. He confirmed the boy had been lying about his age and that a punishment appropriate to a household, the computer taken away for the summer, privileges drastically curtailed, and conversations about online behavior and consequences begun in earnest, had been enforced. It was not theatrical revenge. It was a set of consequences that would actually teach something. The father apologized, and his tone was one of embarrassed, parental fury directed inward. He had failed to see how his child behaved and was trying to make it right. When my daughter heard the news, she hugged her rabbit, then hugged me, then exhaled like someone who had been holding a breath she did not know she'd been keeping. The relief was physical. She visibly relaxed. The little tremors in her hands smoothed out, and she smiled in a way that felt like repair. We did not celebrate the boy's humiliation. We celebrated that the dangerous, ugly thing in the room had been addressed, and that a child who had thought cruelty was anonymous learned that actions have consequences. That felt more like justice than vengeance. The server cleared up. Other parents thanked us quietly. The tone on that world of blocks and crafting improved. There's a humor to the whole episode that still makes me shake my head. A kid who thought he could write bluster and threats behind a screen left so many breadcrumbs that accountability was almost inevitable. The real victory wasn't in humiliating him. It was in restoring my daughter's sense of safety and teaching her something about standing up for herself with help. By the time summer ended, Lily was back to her rituals. The checklist on the monitor, the rabbit, the practiced gasps, but she did them with the calm of someone who knows she is protected and heard. The final note of the whole thing wasn't triumphalist bravado. It was a small, domestic kind of justice. A parent intervened, a child learned a hard lesson, and my daughter learned that adults can and will step in when the playground gets poisoned. That's the kind of ending worth having.